Hello, this is Margaret Ajibada, the STEM Positive Disruptor, and today I have on my platform a special guest, Dr. Cara Morgan. She describes herself as a maths tutor, but she's much more than that. She's actually an associate lecturer with the Open University. She's also an A-level examiner with one of the organizations, but she can explain more on that. Just a brief background on her. She's her journey is so amazing. It's so vast and it's so brilliant. She did her journey from started off from her early years in education. It's such it's an interesting one, which I think maybe it's best for her to explain on that. But what she actually she went on to do to university and she studied maths. And then she fell in love with zoology as well. So she did maths in zoology and came up with a zoology degree. And then she went on to do a master's again, and that was in it was science, it was ecology and environmental science. And then her PhD was in it was a biology science, but it's much more than that. She actually studied otters, so it's really interesting itself. But you know what's so more fascinating than that is the fact that she, even though she had sort of a break from maths in some because of just because of the way her life was, and also because there was a point in her life where things were just not working out. And recently, she has been diagnosed as having ADHD and that she's neurodiverse. And I think this is quite important. And the reason why we're having this conversation again is because, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we had a conversation about maths and how why young girls are not confident learning maths. And, you know, the reason why I brought Cara onto this platform, because again, we need to understand what's the drivers behind why girls are struggling. And I'm not saying all girls are in the same position. And I'm also not saying that the research or the stats is accurate, because again, we can't define if it's a true reflection across the board. So again, we are not saying that, but we also want to continue this conversation. And that's why Cara's on board today. But also you know, and I think this is why we have this platform. We want to educate, we want to raise awareness, we want to change people's perception and demystify what STEM is. That's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We want to provide solutions, and we also want to be able to understand what are the drivers behind why people don't do so well in certain environments. And you know, I love Cara. You know why I love Cara? I love Cara because she has an experience. She had a personal experience which could have put her off maths completely, but she stood her ground and she traveled this journey, and then she eventually got back to that first love of maths. But she can tell us more about that. So without further ado, welcome, Cara.
Thanks ever so much, Margaret. I'm not quite sure where you want me to start.
Well, just, you know, again, the reason why you've come on this platform is to provide solutions. The reason why I'm so grateful that you took time out of your busy schedule is that is to understand what does it mean to be neurodiverse. What does it mean? What can we do about this love-hate relationship that we have with maths, and also how people, society perceives it, and how they project that information to our young people, and then you start believing what is not really true because you've never really been given that opportunity to explore that. And I'm not saying not everyone's the same. Again, that's why I don't think one size fits all, and we need to be very careful with that. And that's the reason why I want you to come have a conversation, but also because you were diagnosed with being ADHD in the last stage of your life, which means there's quite a lot of young people who are going through that. And it's sometimes the way they behave in the classroom is because they're struggling to make sense of who they are, and because the teachers itself are busy. They have a tight schedule, they have to deliver, and therefore they may not have the same time to support everyone within the class. But also sometimes the teachers you have that we have in school may not always be very supportive. And then I'm not saying it in a negative way, but it's a reality because you've been through that. So yeah, that's where I want you to start and explain just very quickly the background, and then we can move on.
Yeah, of course. And thank you, Margaret. I think there's one thing that I do need to point out is that I'm no longer an associate lecturer with the Open University. I was several years ago, but I decided to leave that.
No
So I
problem.
thought I'd just correct that now because
No problem.
we're recording. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I think I have a lot to say. I want to make a lot of points. And I guess what I'd like to do to kind of introduce what I want to say about neurodiversity and women is I'd like to put you on the spot with one question, Margaret, and I'm really sorry to have to do that because
That's all
I don't
right.
like it. But can I just get you to name a famous mathematician that you've ever heard of, please?
No.
Anyone?
You definitely put me on the spot. But you know
It's
something,
hard.
I don't. Yeah,
It's really hard
because I had a love-hate relationship with math. So
Right.
so
But I bet when you were at school, you probably heard of Pythagoras's theorem,
I said
which
yes.
is right. So Pythagoras was a really famous mathematician. So you've probably heard of him, but you have kind of forgot that he was a mathematician. It was just a theorem that you had to learn about triangles. But of course, when I've asked people in the past, name me a famous mathematician, often they've struggled to name any, but often we think of Newton, we think of Einstein, we think of Archimedes or Da Vinci. We could think about Alan Turing, and no one ever mentions any female mathematicians.
Sure.
And I think it's really interesting. People don't seem to realize that Florence Nightingale was actually a statistician. She's portrayed in history as a nurse. Of course, she was the founder of modern nursing, but that was only because she was such a pioneer in statistics that she developed something called a polar area diagram, which is similar to a pie chart, but not quite. And she was really interested in what the data told her about death rates and how death rates. She realized that we could reduce death rates by improving hygiene, etc., etc. But it was only from her statistics that she was able to realize that, and therefore she founded modern nursing as we know it today. We don't really seem to know the names of Mariam Mirzakhini, who was the first woman to be awarded a Fields Medal in maths, which is a very, very prestigious award to be granted. We don't think, well, maybe we do think of Katherine Johnson, who was famous. I think there was a film about her and two other African-American mathematicians. Katherine Johnson joined NASA in 1953, and she was one of the people that was responsible for the Apollo 11 flight to the moon. Yeah. Fascinating. We don't think of Dame Mary Lucy Cartwright, who was the first woman to receive the Sylvester Medal. And there's so many firsts. When you look at the list of female mathematicians that I'm thinking of, there are so many firsts. She was the first woman to receive this medal, the first person to receive this, the first woman to gain a PhD in maths, for example. And there's so many firsts there because, of course, all the people that came before were male mathematicians. And Hannah Fry, who's a very prominent figure at the moment in the media, she's a mathematician, she's amazing. She's had a really good quote in a newspaper article a couple of years ago. And she said that whenever a group of people are omitted, even unintentionally, it comes with an unspoken message about who the audience is supposed to be. And I think that's really profound. And as women, in whatever subject we're studying, we do hear about a lot of the time male characters who were responsible for discoveries or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I think talking about neurodiversity, and obviously it's something I've only realised and were diagnosed with a year ago, the desperate need to feel like you fit in because you feel a little bit different. Masking is a behaviour that's subconscious probably a lot of the time, that absolute need to fit in. That kind of imposter syndrome that comes of not feeling good enough or not feeling like other people and constantly feeling othered. And I do think that the problem is really, really a deep-rooted one, is that we don't, as women, I think, as well as being neurodivergent, we don't often feel like we fit in with this story that's been told about, who maths is supposed to be for. And I think that's really at the heart of it. I think you were asking about how neurodiversity can perhaps affect learning in the classroom. And if we think about ADHD, for example, we do know that people with ADHD can have hyperactivity in the mind as well as physical. We find it incredibly difficult to focus and concentrate on things that we're not quite as interested in. Yet give us something we're interested in, and oh my goodness, we'll be there for hours and hours hyperfixating on something and researching it and playing with it and creating stuff. And there we have the massive issue, I think, about why a lot of women, girls, are maybe not attracted to maths in the first place in the classroom, because it's very dominated by people who can answer questions very quickly and correctly. And okay, well, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to get the answer right, so maybe I'll choose not to participate, because if I do, I'm going to be wrong. And that feeling of rejection and that feeling of not being able to please somebody, and that people-pleasing behavior that seems to be quite innate. And I think there's all of that going on. And where's the creativity? And if I ask, why does this work? What's going to happen to me? And I think there were I had two very formative experiences, I think, in my own education when I was at school that have really shaped me now as a teacher. And one of them, when I was in about year 9 or year 10, I think it was 4th year at the time, we were working on algebra, and I was very, 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 very confused about it. And I think this is possibly my neurodiversity coming in as well. I was very, very confused. I was very excited about using letters, but I didn't really understand why we had to use letters. And a lot of the time we struggle, as neurodivergent people, struggle with counter will. And we're often seen as quite rebellious, and we don't want to follow rules all the time. And we're kind of constantly trying to test those boundaries. But I really wanted to know why we use letters. So I asked my teacher, I said, why are we using letters? And she said, well, we just do, just get on with your work. And now I'm afraid that wasn't good enough. And I just internally kind of exploded. Outwardly, you wouldn't know. But I went on algebra strike for 2 weeks. I was not doing algebra until I understood why. And then, of course, nobody did tell me why. So I realized I just had to get on with my work. And that kind of left me always thinking, hang on a minute, why isn't anybody answering my questions? Yeah. And it made me feel like I wasn't valued, or I don't know really how it made me feel, but it didn't make me feel good. Yeah. I started A-level maths at a different school, and the teacher I had stood in front of the class and said, I don't know why you're all here, you're all going to fail. We were predominantly girls in that class, as I recall. And I do remember feeling really upset about that remark. And it's something that I've taken along with me all my life, and kind of thought about that and how all of our confidence was just crushed in our first lesson. And that was our path. We were like, oh, okay, we're all going to fail. We're not very good. We're being told we're not very good. And again, I asked a question one day and I said, I don't understand what's written on the board. And I was told to get out of the room. I was told to stand outside of the room. And I've had a conversation over the past week, as I know we've had this interview. I've been asking my students, I've been saying, what's been your experience with maths since you were really young? And I've been asking my friends this as well. And something that keeps coming up is I wasn't very good at maths at school, and I just wanted to know why things were true. And I never really nobody really told me. And I keep getting that message coming across. And of course, good mathematicians are the people that ask why. Good mathematicians need to ask why in order to make connections between different areas in maths, or connections with our new ideas they've got, and how we can drive that subject forward. Yeah. And I do think that having a slightly different way of viewing the world or thinking, and I think a lot of people that do succeed in maths tend to be neurodiverse. I haven't got the statistics to back that up. But I do think that we just need a different way of thinking, and that isn't always supported in the classroom. And I think that is a massive issue.
Thank you. Something you're quite right. I think in a way, our early years and our relationship with maths or with any subject itself is based on how that's projected, about how people make time to listen or give us the answers that we ask. I mean, it's normal to be curious. It's normal to ask questions. And I think sometimes teachers do not give us that benefit of the doubt. They think you're just being disruptive when you ask so many questions. And I think
Yeah.
that's a big thing, and I think we need to be aware of that, because sometimes there's that unconscious bias as well, where we assume, we say it's not intentional, but it happens. And you're a prime example of that, and how that also meant you fell out of love with maths, or because you were not enjoying it anymore, because they were not given that opportunity to learn that. So let's fast forward a bit, because again, what I want to do is, because you have got lots of solutions, and also being diagnosed with being neurodiverse, and you also gives you an understanding of people going through that, as you explained right now. So what do you think needs to be done? How can we help teach? Yeah, what do you think needs to be done within the education system? Look, we are celebrating teachers, because teachers do well. It's just sometimes we may have the wrong type of teacher at the wrong time, or timing is just, not everyone wants to be a teacher. Not everyone has patience. And so we know that, but there are people who really have a passion for what they do, and we need to celebrate it. That's why I'm celebrating you too. So what would you say needs to be done? Very briefly as well, because we've got a very short time. What would you say?
Of course. Okay, so as a passionate teacher of mathematics, when I was in the state school system, I was working as best as I could, given the current circumstances. I think one of the deep-rooted problems that we have is that we tend to have made the judgment about people's intellectual ability by whether they're good at maths or not, but really, not really so much that, but whether they've got a high enough score in a test that tests their competence at mathematics at that particular moment in time. It doesn't actually measure if they're good mathematicians. But why aren't we judged on how good we are at geography or history or something like that? Why do we have this, massive status symbol about how good at maths you are? And I think that the new GCSE that came in, I think in 2017 was the first time it was taught. The spec change, I think Michael Gove made a lot of changes to maths and English, and it became extremely hard to access. And I think that what we've seen since then is the foundation paper in particular is hard to access for weaker students who are less able, maybe, especially with language. It's very, very wordy. And we have this situation where morale in the classroom amongst students has gone right down, because they know that if they fail that GCSE, they have to keep on resitting it until the age of 19. And they're upset because it's so hard, and some of them just can't do it. They feel completely disengaged. And it's like, if you look at the math syllabus, there's a lot in it that's good and that's applicable to, real life. Not that we have to learn things that are useful all the time, because learning should be fun in itself, really. But there are a lot of concepts that don't really need to be passed for somebody to go out into the world of work. So I think what there should really be is a difference between GCSE mathematics, which I think should be an optional subject for those people that are interested and want to go and pursue maths, maybe at A-level and beyond, and a core qualification in numeracy or something like that. And if everyone did this core qualification in numeracy, we would maybe get people or students that were more positive about what they were going to achieve in it in the first place. And that would, I think, really help solve a lot of issues that we have in the classroom at the moment. So that's one of the things I really think needs to change. Secondly, class sizes are too big. Class sizes are too big because schools don't have the budgets to have enough staff to have more classes, or maybe their buildings are just at capacity because the schools are oversubscribed. And we just don't also have enough support from learning support assistants in the classrooms, because with funding cuts, a lot of them have had to go, or at least head teachers have had to make the very difficult decision that that's a cut that they're going to have to take because they can't afford to get rid of teaching staff. And so therefore we have pupils in the classroom who may be well undiagnosed with, some kind of neurodiversity that makes it harder for them to access, and they just don't have the support. In all my years of teaching in the classroom, I came across a lot of boys that were diagnosed with ADHD. And I don't remember, I think apart from one, I remember one girl in 19 years that I worked with who was diagnosed with ADHD. So I think there's a lot of hidden neurodiversity that we don't know about. And so I think that if we can address class sizes, more support, making maths more accessible for everyone, we can also, by doing that, help people that are struggling for different reasons. So that's a few suggestions that I've got.
Yeah, you know, that is so true, and I do agree with you. And I think in a way, I think, you know, we've always had this traditional route of learning, and this is what you were describing, where there was a change in 2017 with the government changing it, but you felt that it was actually much harder to access itself. But also you brought a suggestion that maybe there should be two sets of maths.
Yeah.
Where we have the GCSEs, you know, but then you have the literacy type which would be more generic to everyone, where people can then still get a benefit, because then it's more relatable, more transferable as well. But you know, also that means that where the industry is concerned, they're used to a routine. Everyone's like traditional in so many ways, that this is the expectation, unless you have these grades, unless you do this, unless you do that. But you know, you made a good point also, not everyone works well under that examination set process. Not everyone, because they have different reasons for that. You talked about languages, you talked about just being overwhelmed, having to sit there, the pressure you put on yourself. There's so many different reasons for that, because you know, just listen to your background. I know you didn't speak about it right now, because of the initial teacher stating, well, I don't think you guys are going to pass. That put a lot of pressure on you. You started questioning your ability to actually succeed. And I think sometimes people say things, and we've got to be careful how we speak to each other, what we say to people, especially young people, because we do take on what you say, because you're an adult, you must have a reason for saying that. And so you believe, you start building on that, and that's not truth. Just a teacher just being, I don't know, being a pain. Anyway, that's another thing altogether. But you know, again, but you know, that is a great solution. But that means we need to change the mindset of so many different organizations, because it's not going to. We do have literacy and numeracy, which we know, but then you still have to go on to do your GCSE. So whichever way you look at it, but the thing is, you are a prime example of what is possible, because you had a love affair, that you loved math from a very early age. You wanted to know math. You explored math. You taught yourself math. Not because the teachers helped you, because you didn't get the grade that you wanted when you were at school. So you had to teach yourself math to get the grades you need, so in order for you to go to university. But not everybody has that same drive, and I also believe that your parents had a lot to do with it as well. Or I hope, well, I'm assuming they did, or people did, or maybe not.
Well, I actually was completely self-motivated.
And that's good.
Yeah, I lived with my mum. She was a single parent. She worked full time, and she'd never been to university, hadn't really followed an academic route at all. And I think a lot of the time she didn't really know what was involved in how hard you had to work. And she kind of trusted me to do it, and I did do it. But I didn't have somebody pushing me to do it. It all came because otherwise I was a very resistant teenager. If somebody had told me to do something, I wouldn't have done it. And I think my mum knew that, and I think she was quite clever in how she did it with me.
Of course. And that's the same with so many young people as well. The more you push them, the more they start resisting you. And I think it's actually, you know, having that balance. And that's why the school is important, the environment is important, society, what they say and how they project and what they assume. Because again, there are lots of that unconscious, I'm going to go back to that unconscious biases and how we project, how we perceive somebody to be, what you think is and what there isn't. But if they're in the right environment, they do flourish, and they do reach heights that you wouldn't expect, because the environment is conducive to help them to succeed. But anyway, I love to listen and talk about this, because it's a big subject and it's a very important subject. But how then, because we all, I think everyone has a love-hate relationship. Maths we use on a daily basis. It's nothing is not based just on the classroom environment. It's not about, setting theorems or whatever it is. It's about the application of it on an everyday basis. And I think that's something we seem to miss out. We seem to focus it on an environment which is saying, well, this is the study environment, this is what you need to learn. But there's not, sometimes we don't use related to the everyday life and how maths is used. And so in a way, you're stumped in so many ways. And so students can't see how it benefits them. And so they start building this image of, this is too hard. How am I going to use it? What's it going to do from da, 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 da? Of course, it's not always true. And there are lots of things to be done on that.
It's interesting you say that, Margaret, because I hear people say that a lot of the time about maths, but I don't hear them ever saying that about other subjects where maybe they're learning something in history that they're not interested in, but I don't often hear them say, why am I even bothering learning this? What's the point? What's the point? It seems to me, it seems a very maths specific problem. And
Yeah.
I don't know why.
But it's, again, society says, oh, Matt, again, it's perception, isn't it? It's what you see, it's what you believe. And again, it's just like, when we look at people from different backgrounds, you have a perception of what they are like, and it's not true. Yeah. It's just the same with subjects as well. And I think that's why we need to change that. So this moves us quickly quite forward as to what would be your 3 practical solutions that will help government? Because, you talked about the change in the GCSE in 2017, that instead of it making it easier, it made it more difficult. But saying that, girls are excelling in the maths. If you look at the results that are being projected, we know that they're doing really well. They're studying well under certain conditions. So we know that there's, again, it depends on what side you look at. Is the glass half full or is it half empty? It's all relative to who you're talking to. So what are the practical solutions? So where the government is concerned, where teachers are concerned, and where society and the media is concerned, because again, we are the ones that either make or break our young people in the way we speak, in the way how we translate what we see as possible.
Well, I think that they are 3 very, very difficult questions to answer. I think in terms of the government, I think that I've already come up with a solution about having a common numeracy qualification, which everyone might have to pass, with some exceptions, of course, for people that can't access that. And an optional GCSE mathematics route for those that have a love of mathematics or a desire to do that in future. Mm-hmm. I think where the where teachers are concerned, I think that's more difficult because they're not really in control as much because they're often told what to deliver. But if maths could be delivered in a more collaborative way and a less competitive way in the classroom, and allowing students time to be creative and explore the syllabus in greater depth, or in fact explore topics that are not even on the syllabus, just to be able to have time to do that. And I think that comes back to maybe another solution for education as a whole and the government is maybe make the primary maths curriculum not as vast, but more deep. And so when students get to secondary school, a lot of it is more new, because a lot of them, when they get to secondary school, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. I know you say you've done this, but actually you've got so many gaps and you don't really understand what you're doing and why. So there are a couple of solutions. And I'm struggling to think of the last point. I know I've got it.
Well, don't worry. If you have a solution, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's not critical, because again, I mean, when you make, yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say about how we can change the way we do things in the media. Of course, there was a 10-year-long study in Denmark that looked at what happens when you tell girls that they are good at maths. And the result, in a nutshell, was that it more than halved the gender gap when they got to degree level.
Wow.
So raising people's self-confidence, stopping mentioning how bad we are at maths and, oh, goodness me, I was terrible at maths when I was at school. And and all of those perpetuating ideas that actually kind of almost tell you what you should be thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know how we really address that with the media, but I think that people who are big in the media, prominent, like, for example, Catherine Burble-Singh, who is a very prominent head teacher, and I believe now works for the government, shouldn't really be saying things like, girls shun physics A-levels as they dislike the hard maths, which was a comment she made to a committee of MPs a couple of years ago. I remember seeing that and thinking that's really not a great thing to say, and I don't think it's true. But again, it perpetuates that idea.
Exactly, and that's the problem. That's why we're struggling. That's why girls, they accept what is not true, and because they don't, it's not really an interest for them. They don't actually go out their way to want to even explore it, and I think that's a big thing. And that's where society, the way even our parents or people that are around us, is how do you speak, and also our teachers as well, because if you don't have the right type of teacher around you who has a passion for you, who cares enough to want you to believe in yourself, because confidence confidence to learn comes from the people around you encouraging you through that journey itself. And unless we have that, we're always going to be struggling.
Yes, and I think a big part of my job, although I'm a teacher of maths, is not necessarily the teaching of maths, but the leading pupils to believe they have the self-confidence to become good at maths is all part of such an important part of teaching in whatever subject you're in, but particularly with girls in maths, I think.
I think, you know, that's 80% of it though.
Yeah, I think so, definitely.
Because if you believe in something, you are then going to be driven to one, and you find it becomes easier, because all you have to have is that German moment where you say, "Oh, is that it?" And you just flourish, and that's what it's all about.
And I think working as a tutor now, I feel like I'm in a really privileged position to be that person's sidekick who can always say, wow, you're really good at that. That's a fantastic question. And developing that lovely relationship where it's okay to make mistakes. Let's explore something together. And you see their self-belief just grow, and it has a knock-on effect at what they do at school. So yeah, that is a privilege. And I think if everyone could have an ally, a sidekick that was always there for them to, you know, big them up when they were feeling not so confident, or saying, that's not a stupid question, because no question is actually stupid. That's actually a really good question. It's actually a really good question. Indeed. I'm glad you asked. Why not let's ask everybody that question?
Indeed.
It doesn't take much for teachers to answer questions like the whys. And if they don't know, be honest about it. If we don't know, we need to be honest about it and say, well, actually, that's really interesting. I'll explore that, and let's talk about it next lesson when I've had a chance to do some reading.
Exactly, and that's what it should be all about. In an ideal world, but I think we should really incorporate that in our education system itself. Yes, indeed. Yeah, do you know, thank you so much, Cara. I really enjoyed it. And I know it's very short, but I think also we want them, because you know, you brought up some good points, and I think it's so important. I think your journey as well showcase what is possible, because you could have given up and not go back, but you had opportunities across your journey to be able to come back to that first love. You know, even when you were doing your PhD as well, where you were able to help other students to understand the analysis of what the statistics of things and how they can apply it. And I think that is so important. But you know, you've had that passion from young age, and I think it's just all you need is a trigger. And that's also with young people as well. They just need something to trigger them off again, and they find the passion again, and that's so important. So thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation. I really appreciate you coming here on board, and I also celebrate your journey, because you're an amazing woman. I love what you do, and also even with your families, with your daughter as well, what you've done is just amazing. So thank you for being that powerful role model that we want all teachers to be like, because you are a wonderful teacher. So thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's really lovely to meet you today. Thank you, Margaret.
You too. Thank you. Again, thank you very much. This is Margaret Ajibona, the STEM Positive Disruptor. Please, if you enjoy this conversation, please subscribe. Support us in this, because we want to provide solutions. And you know, I'll call her Dr. Cara Morgan, but maths tutor. She's come on board and she's provided amazing solutions as well. So please, let's spread the word and let's showcase what is possible, and let's change the system. Let us not normalize what's not should be normalized, and let's build up our children and bring the best out of them. And there's so many ways to do that. So please listen to this podcast and share with your friends as well. Thank you very much.